100 people. He could heal the sick, and brother, he can heal you right now if we call upon his name. If we walk into the light, get away from all the darkness that's been clouding your life. If we call his name, if we call his name, he will hear us. There's been some of your own friends who see you in a different way. All the games they play has taken your kindness away. But you are so beautiful, and he loves it when you smile. Let's bow our heads together, asking for his love. If we call his name, if we call his name, he will hear us. He will hear us from the mountains, he will hear us from the waters, he will hear us from the valleys, he will hear us when we pray, he will hear us when we're crying, he will heal us from this pain, he will take it all away and make us brand new again. If we call his name, if we call his name, he will hear us. I don't know what they're saying, but he hears every word. Will he ask me to stand beside him? I know he has forgiven, so let him touch you now. Let him into your life, there you will stand beside him. You will feel his love. If we call his name, if we call his name, he will hear us.
Good morning and welcome to Dreammakers, bringing to you this morning a really incredible man, Dr. Huggins, and he is a hugger. So Dr. Huggins has come to Maui before, and we're really blessed and pleased to have him with us here today. He has information that is important for every one of you to hear, which you know that's why I have him here, so you can hear. And I am very happy to introduce him to you and let him say hello to Maui.
Hello to Maui and the people therein. So, what is it that you'd like to hear about today?
Well, I'd like to hear exactly a little bit first about you and how you, tell me how you came to be a dentist, which Dr. Huggins is a dentist of some sorts.
Yes, that would be kind of some sorts is probably it, because I'm a dentist who hasn't touched a mouth since 1984. So that's probably an unusual sort of dentist. Actually, coming into dentistry, I came in as an ordinary dentist a long time ago, placing amalgams, removing teeth, doing root canals, doing all of those things. And then in 1973, I became exposed to the concept that mercury comes out of those fillings. Well, mercury is poisonous. You know, these silver fillings, silver is kind of a marketing tool, because the 52% of the filling is actually mercury. So if we're being, you know, truth in lending or whatever those laws are, we should really be calling it a mercury filling. Well, I found out in 1973 that mercury comes out of the fillings. And when it does, it's absorbed into the body, and mercury in the body does all kinds of things that are not real nice, creating diseases. Then we found that by taking out the fillings, my field at that time was working with blood chemistry, so I knew that if you change the blood chemistry, you could change a person's health. And it didn't take long to find out that the mercury coming out of the fillings changed people's health.
So the mercury was making everybody sick, or is making everybody sick.
Yeah,
Basically.
maybe not everybody today, but wait till tomorrow. You know, some people react right away. Some people take a little while before they react. But sooner or later, you accumulate enough mercury that something's going to happen. So we found if we take the mercury fillings out, some people got better and some people didn't. And over the period of the last 30 years, I've been finding out why that is true. Because if you just go in and take out a bunch of fillings, chances of somebody getting better are about 10%. Well, with incurable diseases, that's pretty good. You know, 0 up to 10.
Well,
it's okay.
Yeah, but when you talk about diseases, I think it's important that our public, thank you. I was at your workshop yesterday, which I enjoyed tremendously. It was so educational for me. But I think that these people out here need to have a little bit of hit about what kind of diseases you're talking about. Or, we talk about what this mercury is doing to the body. Boy, it's scary. It's really scary.
Well, it was scary to me too, but it took about 10 years to get scary, and that scariness I can drop on you in a matter of just a couple of moments. There are symptoms that we see too, symptoms like depression. In a big study we did of 1,300 plus patients, we found that unexplained depression was number one of all the symptoms that we worked with. Chronic fatigue is way up there too. Depression and suicidal thoughts and all that are up there in the 70%. And the chronic fatigue was about 68%, as I remember. But it seems to me in the patients that I see, practically all of them suffer from chronic fatigue. And then if you get into things that are a little more serious, you find things like leukemia that respond, Alzheimer's disease responds, multiple sclerosis, lupus, Lou Gehrig's disease, arthritis, diabetes. It sounds like we've got a whole textbook of things. Well, we do, but there is a common denominator. The common denominator is that they are all what are called autoimmune diseases. An autoimmune disease, auto means self, means your immune system is destroying your own tissues. Well, after it became evident that that's what was going on, I went back to University of Colorado when I was almost 50 years old and took a master's degree with emphasis in immunology and toxicology. The toxicity of mercury I found extended to the toxicity of copper because the fillings contain 30% copper. Then we found that nickel, many of the, quote, gold crowns, about 85% of those are now made out of nickel, because it's cheaper.
So if I have a gold crown, it might be nickel?
If it's gold colored, it's probably gold.
It's gold colored.
Oops, not real gold colored. Looks some more nickel color.
Uh-oh.
Yes, because nickel seems to be the most carcinogenic or cancer-producing metal that we have. They took it away from medicine many years ago and put it into dentistry.
And I thought I had gold.
Well, it may be, but it doesn't look like it from here.
See?
But the braces are made out of nickel too. In children we put in little things called chrome crowns because chrome crown is kind of a cutesy little name. But just like the silver filling, the chrome crown doesn't have much chrome in it. It's primarily nickel. So if you get an exposure to nickel when you're 2, 3, 5 years old, then the baby tooth falls out and you get braces, you have your second exposure to nickel, and the immune system really gets upset about that. Then when you get into your 20s and 30s and need a crown, and that's made out of nickel, the immune system has had 3 major challenges, and that's more apt to be the time when the cancer type things would come into play. So, well, if that's all you get, you're real lucky. Some people get a lot worse things than goosebumps.
Absolutely.
And then we found that just taking the fillings out doesn't do much. So this developed into what we now call the multidisciplined approach. And that means that we use multi-health disciplines. We use a combination of medicine and dentistry and chiropractic and nutrition, nursing, IV procedures, acupressure, massage, detoxification. All of these things together will produce a result that none of us can produce by ourselves. So for the last 20 years, we have been working in that, and the last year I've been working down in Puerto Vallarta for Dr. Javier Morales, setting up a center down there that does the things that we did in Colorado. It's a beautiful area down there, but
Yeah.
boy, I tell you, you got a pretty nice area here in Maui. It's kind of
We
nice.
do. Although
Yeah.
it sounds very nice to go to your clinic in Puerto Vallarta, I'm very drawn to do that for myself.
Mhm.
You know, I had my, I thought I did what I needed to do. I had my fillings taken out like way back in 1985 or 84, something like that. I heard about this and I said, get them out. You
Yeah.
know, and I thought that I had done what I needed to do.
And many people do feel that way. Even now, dentists, of course, can't come in. If you come up to a dentist and you say, "Is mercury poisonous?" and he says, "Sure, it's the most poisonous metal on the planet," he just forfeited his license. So dentists can't really talk to you about the toxicity, or they're going to lose their license. There's kind of a little click there that controls whether or not you're going to make a living. I mean, you can always go out and sell used cars, but many people, by the time they put in 8 years in college, would just as soon continue practicing dentistry. But even so, many of the dentists who dare to work in this field feel that just taking out a filling, if putting in the filling gives you a problem, taking it out cures it, corrects it, doesn't it? Sure, just like
That's
if you
what I
take a
thought.
pin and poke it in a balloon, and if you take that pin out real fast, the balloon goes back together, right?
Right.
Wrong. Try it. Take a balloon, take a pin, and pop it. And then pull the pin
Okay.
out real fast and see if the balloon goes back together. It doesn't. This is what happens to the immune system, the endocrine system. The whole body gets shattered when these things go in the mouth. And putting it back together is why we need the multidiscipline team. You have to have the right nutrition to put you together. What's the right nutrition? Oh, it's carnivore, it's vegetarian, it is, what do you call it when you eat
Vegan?
rice and...
Oh,
macrobiotic.
Right. Thank you, Jason.
Everybody has their own religion on nutrition. But if you look at the blood chemistry, your blood chemistry knows how much carbohydrate, protein, and fat you need. And if you alter your diet to come closer to that, your blood chemistry will come closer to an ideal level, which has nothing to do with a normal level. It's within the normals. But people who are sick have a very, very wide range of blood chemistries. This is called normal.
Right.
But there's a very, very narrow range for people who are in optimum health. And this is what we use as a target area.
Do they even have any kind of normal for optimum health? I mean, where they've done tests on people who are in optimum health?
Oh, well, we have done the test on some people who are in optimum health, and we take people who are sick and head them that direction. And we find that the more weller they become, the more closer they come to that chemistry. So it's a chemistry that, you know, I can say, I can make your hematocrit, which is a measurement of red blood cells in your body, I can get it to 46%. In truth, I really can't do that, but you can. I can tell you how to get there. But if you hit 47, you're a little bit overcorrected. If you hit 44, you're a little bit undercorrected. We have a target area, and when you hit all of the target areas perfectly, you can take over God's job because you are perfect. We haven't had too many people get there, but
Right.
we know where it is. And when you have worked with enough patients to see these same levels occur again and again, you know that the human biology, your human chemistry wants to seek that level. If it's not there, either you are short on raw materials or there is an interference. So we have to find out what the interference is and remove it, or we have to find out what the deficiencies and excesses are and correct that.
And how would one go about doing that? How would we find out if we had mercury poison, which I know most people on the planet.
Well, if you have a
here
filling
today
in your
do.
mouth, you're going to have a toxic reaction to. That's
But-
pretty simple.
But
The
how would
problem,
the
if I
general
might
public
interrupt,
find that?
the problem is you don't know where that's going to be.
What do you mean
It's
by
kind
that?
of like Mercury is the little guy with the machine gun. He walks into a crowd and it goes bang. Is he going to hit somebody? Probably so. Who? I don't have any idea. Mercury walks into the human body with the ability to destroy any tissue. Which tissue is it going to destroy? Whatever your genetic weak link is probably what's going to get destroyed. So you can't predict that.
Yeah, yesterday, Dr. Huggins explained to us how the white cells work in the body. And it was, I studied these things before, but I had never heard it the way you explained it, which I absolutely found so clear. And to see that that everything gets destroyed there, it made the picture so clear to me. You know, but when I think about how we're all walking around now, I mean, I'm like going, I want to go to Puerto Vallarta and get all this cleared up. But what about the general public? How can they find out? How can they help to heal themselves?
Unfortunately, there's only one place in the world that really does the whole package. There are people around who have had training with me who have the guts to buck their local societies and go out and try to do little parts of this. But if you do a little part of it, you don't always get a whole lot of success with it. But things are beginning to break loose now, so that more of the dentists, more of the physicians are finding that this is the missing link. I've had this disease I've been playing with for years, and all of a sudden you go through the protocol that's involved with the removal of fillings, and you can show in the blood chemistry changes in 2 or 3 days. High cholesterols, you can bring a high cholesterol down 100 points in a week, and that's a week from Monday to Friday. When you see these things can happen rapidly, when you see the people who have been in a wheelchair have the ability to get up and take 2 or 3 steps within 1 to 2 weeks, then they're beginning to say, what's the deal with the Dental Association anyway? Well, probably one of the big deals, the only big deal, is money. Who owns the patents on the amalgam filling? The American Dental Association.
How do we stop these dentists from putting this into these children's mouths, which are creating their bodies to be poisoned?
You just got it right there. How do we do it? We do it. We as parents, when you go to see the dentist, you say, I do not want mercury put in my child's mouth. And there's a certain percentage of the time, like maybe 10 or 15% of the time, the dentist is going to go ahead and put the mercury in anyway. To me, this is malpractice. That is bad practice. If a patient comes in and says, I know that mercury is the most toxic material on the planet, I don't want it in myself, I don't want it in my family, and the dentist says, I don't care what you want, I'm going to stick it in because it's cheap, I don't think that has anything to do with a health profession. But I do think that your body belongs to you, and you have the ability as a patient, as a parent, to dictate what you don't want in your body, especially if it is as well documented as mercury is, and being toxic, being poisonous. You have the right to direct activities. You don't have to go in there with a drill and cut your own teeth apart.
That's right.
But the dentist should respect the fact that it is your body and you have first choice as to what goes in and what doesn't.
Well, even right here with this example that we just used a little while ago with this gold tooth. Now, when I had this tooth capped, I said to my dentist, look, I've had all of my metals out. I've had the silvers out. I don't want metals in my body. What can we do? Well, first of all, when I first had the silver taken out, or the mercury taken out, I thought, but my teeth were still gray. Where the silver was, they were literally gray. So they had absorbed the mercury into them. Then they put porcelain on, because that's what I said, okay, no metals, porcelain.
So what you got was aluminum oxide.
Right, yesterday I'm sitting listening to you and I'm going, ah! So what I get with the porcelain, I find out from Dr. Huggins yesterday, is also poisonous.
Well, aluminum for some time has been considered as one of the primary causes in, Alzheimer's disease. So, is it really the cause? Well, it is not the primary cause, no, but it is certainly a contributing factor. Dr. Boyd Haley down at the University of Kentucky has recently shown that if you want to really get down to the root of Alzheimer's, look in the mouth again, because it's a combination of mercury and zinc coming from the, quote, silver filling, that as they work together in the body, creates certain patterns in the brain that can be duplicated in the test tube. And you can duplicate each one of the basic 6 steps to create Alzheimer's. You can do all this by the mercury and zinc coming out of the fillings. Have we seen improvements in Alzheimer's and taking out fillings and running the patient through the total protocol? Yes, we have. One of the big problems is that these people, many of them get to the point where they don't talk. We had one woman who hadn't talked in 14 years.
Wow.
And she started talking, and the next year her husband called and said, if we came out around Colorado, do you think maybe you could put in just 1 or 2 fillings? So she hadn't stopped talking. So if we could just slow her down a little bit so I could get a word in edgewise. And we have seen that in Alzheimer's, that it's not one of these overnight cures.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But 1 month is, yeah, it's better than when you started. And 3 months, oh yeah, it's notably. 6 months, a year, they're back driving. They can have a driver's license. They can do these.
Incredible?
But they don't stop talking. So you got to consider this when you treat the Alzheimer's patient. You know, is it worth is it worth what you're going to have to put up with?
You know, you told some stories yesterday that were pretty mind-boggling to me. One of them being about the child, the little boy. And this I wanted you to hear. Can you give them a small picture of that story? Because I really want people to understand how important this is and what you are doing to your own child when you're putting these things in your child's mouth.
Yeah. To the boy that I mentioned yesterday, when he was about 8 years old, he went to the dentist on a Friday and had 2 fillings placed. On Saturday, he was getting fussy, which was unusual for his personality. Not unusual as a reaction to mercury, however. And on Sunday, he was running a fever, and he was definitely in trouble. Something was going on that wasn't right. They took him to the hospital and checked him out and found that he had leukemia. Well, his mother had read my book, so she called me and said, what do I do? Well, there's an extensive protocol that goes along with something like this, but if it's just started, it's just getting with it, and they were a long ways away, I said, just get the fillings out, which is, you know, not what you do usually. There are 2 ways to do it, fast and right. Mm-hmm. Here I was saying, let's do it fast before any more damage can get done, because once leukemia gets rolling, it is hard to turn around. So they told the doctors about it, and the doctors, of course, said, why, mercury couldn't have anything to do with toxic reaction in the body. He's got a chemotherapy deficiency. So they gave him 6 different rounds of chemotherapy, and he was not in good shape by the time they finished. After 6 weeks, they turned him loose for a weekend. During that weekend, the family had the fillings removed. Well, the doctors waited over a week before telling the parents after they went back, but the day he came back, he no longer had leukemia. It was gone. But they waited a week and followed it, and the white blood cells stayed down where they belonged, and this made the doctors real nervous, so they decided they better give him a new round of a really heavy antibiotic to make sure it didn't come back again. Well, this darn near killed him, and they ended up having to do surgery on him and take out his spleen, which led to, and I expect any day now to hear that he has died. The thing that's probably most important about this story is it didn't have to happen. If the parents, if the dentist knew that mercury was poisonous and knew that people react to poisons, and they had never put the filling in, we would never have gotten acquainted with this family. They would never have gone through the thousands and thousands of dollars of testing and the agony that the whole family goes through while they're trying to save this boy's life, while the mercury's coming out 60 seconds every minute trying to take his life.
60 seconds
Well,
every minute?
60 seconds every Isn't that right? 60 minutes every second?
And if you,
60 seconds every minute. Yes, you can take an industrial meter for mercury detection and put it over the tooth, and in 10 seconds you've got a reading. Now, if that's not coming out fast, I don't know what is. I mean, I've tested some things where, you know, you're testing bacterial growth. You got to put in an incubator for a couple of days before you can spot what's going on. 10 seconds you can get toxic readings off of teeth. And, you know, and some of the tests, if I might carry this a little farther, some of the tests have shown if you chew gum, the amount of mercury coming out of the filling goes up about tenfold. Well,
Really?
yeah. Well, we were interviewed by national television the other day, and they said, will anything else do it? And I said, well, yeah, anything hot is going to do it. And said, have you ever tested that? And I said, no. I said, well, why don't you, we had a person there who had a bunch of fillings that we had shown. The readings went from 3 up to 86, and 25 to 50 is the toxic limit in the United States, 10 in most of Europe. So 60-some was a pretty toxic reading for the amount of mercury coming off the filling. So I gave this guy a glass of hot water out of the faucet. Now, this isn't as hot as coffee, but he just took it and went down like that. I took the meter, put it in the mouth. We're talking about a matter of maybe 3 to 5 seconds between the time he drank and the time I got there with the meter. It went up over 500. Well, I'd never seen anything like this. So my face kind of showed it. You know, I was kind of a wow. And that came out on television, of course, because I was quite surprised.
Really?
So what happens when you drink coffee? What happens when you drink tea? What happens when you eat things that are hot? You get a whole lot more mercury coming out. And there's no place in the body that has any better absorption than the cheeks and under the tongue. So bingo, it goes right in. Or if you inhale, it's into the lungs. And the lungs, where is it going? To the bloodstream. From the bloodstream, where can it go? Everywhere in the body. So what can mercury do? It can attack any place in the body. There are no barriers. There is no blood-brain barrier to mercury. There is no placental barrier to mercury. So any place you go, mercury can do the damage. Right.
And none of our little white cells can kill it off.
That's right, but they don't know that. The white cells go in and they say, hey, we're going to take care of this mercury problem for you. So they go in and they do what's called engulfing the mercury. They just kind of swallow it. It goes inside the body, and the cell tries to kill the mercury. Well, yeah, it's kind of like, have you ever tried to kill water? Yeah, if you take the water out here and you shoot it with a gun, did you kill it? No, it's still water. You can't kill mercury. Mercury is there. So the cell takes in the mercury, and then it kills the cell. And then, as we were demonstrating yesterday, each cell calls for a white blood cell that's a little bit stronger to come in. The stronger cell comes in and it gobbles up mercury and it dies, and now you have a real immune challenge. The whole immune system is upset by what was put into the mercury filling.
I had to jump in from behind the camera. So what do we do? I mean, you've now alarmed me where you even pulled me off the camera to come into the film here with you guys. What do we do? Never mind, we don't put it in.
Silvers, and you get angry. Anger is another one you said,
well,
right?
my anger is justified.
That's what they all say.
That's what they all say.
Yes.
The fact is, my consideration is, what do we do? Obviously, you've set up a clinic in Puerto Vallarta so you could do things that somehow you're being stopped here from doing.
Yeah.
Like what?
You can't.
And what can we do?
What you can do is get yourself educated. I mean, I've written 2 books. One of them called It's All in Your Head. I wrote some years ago, primarily on mercury. The most recent one is Uninformed Consent. And when I wrote Uninformed Consent, I had no fear. So it goes into other things. It goes deeply into birth defects, into chronic fatigue, into breast cancer, to multiple sclerosis, to ALS. Really exposes a wide gamut of diseases that have been shown to respond when you use the total protocol in getting it out. There are other countries around the world who are interested in installing this protocol. I'll be talking to some of those people this afternoon even. And if we can get places where there is an interest in people's health, restoring their health, then we'll have it available. Now, we are trying to get some things set up on the internet where the doctor can program in what his problems are and the answers can come back, generated by computer. We have a massive computer program with a whole lot of questions and answers in it that fit 90% of the problems. For the other 10%, I'll come tell what I know about it. So there are, right now, Puerto Vallarta is about the only thing we can do. There are some dentists who will at least get your fillings out without trying to put more mercury in. And these people we can educate, we have educated, but still they're coming from fear because they know if they say anything's wrong, it's like in the state of California, the law was passed a couple of years ago that dentists have to have a sign that says, warning, this office uses amalgam which contains mercury, which is known to produce birth defects and reproductive harm. Then it says something real interesting. Please consult your dentist before going ahead. And you consult the dentist and you say, tell me about mercury. And he says it's bad. He just forfeited his license. So talk about catch-22, you can't get out of that.
But what can we do? You know, it's like when you were telling this story about this poor child, and I'm thinking about all these other poor children and adults who have no idea, none, that this silver filling could be associated with the fact that they're ill.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, let's not blame everything on the silver filling. It doesn't make all of these diseases. Sometimes we have to call for help from the root canal. Still in the dental office,
Thank you.
but
That's mine now, yeah.
but many diseases can be caught from a root canal because root canals are dead objects. I mean, if a surgeon found a ruptured appendix and said, I want to put a gold crown on it and fill the inside of it with wax, he'd be run out of the profession. But in dentistry, this is what we do. You know, we put a gold crown on it, we put some wax inside of it, and we'll give you a bunch of antibiotics. But the antibiotics do not kill the chemicals that are formed there. The chemicals that are formed within dead teeth and root canal teeth are stronger than even botulism, which is supposed to be the strongest toxin on the planet.
Stronger than botulism?
Yeah, almost 1,000 times more poisonous than botulism. So every time you bite down, you squirt a few molecules into your body. And this stuff is so strong that it only takes molecules to set off diseases. So what are you going to do? Self-educate. We have another little booklet called the Protocol booklet that tells when and where to use acupressure, how to use doesn't tell how to use the nutrition, but it tells when to use it. Many of the supplements work against people. Which ones work against you? Which ones work for you? How to monitor the blood chemistry. But you're the one who has to go in and get yourself educated and realize that the physicians and dentists can't really work together. Oh, they can refer, or I can say I'm sending this patient to you, but we can't really go sit down and have a cup of coffee and say, let me tell you what I really think's going on. You tell me what you think is really going on. And we both work for the same company? Physicians and dentists cannot work in the same practice together in the United States. In other countries you can. And some of the most fun countries I have are where you have to have a medical degree before you can go into dental school. 2 years on top of your medical degree, you have a dental degree. You can talk both languages.
Right.
And that's wonderful.
How can you go in and have a cup of coffee? From what I understand, any hot liquid shoots up my toxicity.
Yeah.
So no more hot fluids out there. Coffee roasters and Starbucks, you're in trouble.
Yeah, what happens with the caffeine there? That does even more damage than the heat.
Please don't tell us.
Yeah, some things you don't want to know.
Yeah, we do want to know.
Like what? I mean, basically, we have to consider that we're killing ourselves every day.
Under supervision of your dentist, yes.
Right. And now, even if we have all the fillings taken out, we stop having the root canals, we still have to go through a process to clear our body, and then we can drink coffee again.
If
If it has caffeine, though.
If you want to go back to being sick, yes, because going through a program like this is not for everybody. Yeah, it's only for those who are interested in their health.
So it's not something for the medical profession. I mean, I can tell you, I just went through a procedure in LA with the doctors around Airielle, and I kind of wonder when I walk through a medical facility, what their purpose in being there is. It seems like they make things much, well, much more
Well, I
difficult.
tell you, they do have an excellent background. We have brilliant people in medicine, and when they go through my seminars and learn the physiology of the chemistry, see, they're taught, here's your chemistry, normal range. If it's within the normal range, forget it. If it's outside of it, refer to a hematologist, a specialist in giving drugs for blood problems. And when they see that all of life is contained in this one area of blood chemistry, when they see that they can instruct the patient on how to change it, and in 3 or 4 days you come back, look at another chemistry and say, hey, it did change. Now, for instance, we were giving a seminar in Puerto Vallarta recently, and one man came in with a triglycerides of 751. Well, triglycerides is a thick goo that you shouldn't be running around with high levels. If you've got 100 milligrams, this is okay. Above 200, it's getting to be a problem. The 750 was a real problem. In 5 days, this man dropped his triglycerides from 751 down to 200. He got a standing ovation from the doctors in the class.
Wow.
He was a patient. He's the one who did it. All we did was tell him what to do, and part of this was to avoid coffee.
Wow.
Avoid
Wow.
caffeine. Coffee was a problem, but
Coffee.
caffeine is what does it. Yeah. So
Sorry,
how many
Starbucks.
drugs are available that would lower triglycerides 200, 300, 400 points in a week? There aren't any. If there were, they would kill the body in the process. And yet this patient was instructed in a few minutes, a few hours maybe, on what to do. Did it work? You got the chemistry to prove it, to show it. So has he stayed on the diet? Has he stayed on the program? You bet he has. Because every 3 to 6 months we do another blood test, and if he's gotten off the program, we're the first to know. Because that triglycerides is his sensitive part, and up it's going to go.
I'm going to jump back on the camera again, but I just had to come in and say hello. You know,
Oh, it's nice to have you visit.
it's just like having an office visit.
Pretty nice office, really.
How about opening up a clinic here? Do we have to deal with the laws of the state of Hawaii?
Yes, and you have to deal with the laws of the American Dental Association, because it pretty well controls what dentistry does worldwide.
So if the nation of Hawaii or the kingdom of Hawaii has its land here that has designated its own kingdom, you could come back here.
Yeah.
So we can marry
Yeah,
up
they have an area like that
dentistry
in
and
Arizona.
tourism. Like that?
Yeah, they have an area like that in Arizona that the Indians own, and you can come in and set up anything you want to there.
Okay.
But if you want to set up an area for people who are interested in overcoming these, quote, incurable diseases, and you don't cure them, but you can certainly live with them, and you can improve them, this is what you want to do. If you want to set up a center like that, yeah, sure. I think this is, I mean, certainly people don't balk at coming to Puerto Vallarta, except they think, well, it's a good place to go, but don't drink the water and don't breathe the air. Well, actually, the water down there is better than it is in Colorado Springs, and the air out in Puerto Vallarta is like what you've got here right on the ocean. It's quite good. And down there we can do whatever we want to, because what we want to do is not illegal, immoral, or fattening.
Yay.
What we're trying to do is help people.
Are you going
And
to tell me
people
chocolate's
down
no
there,
good? Is chocolate okay?
I think he's stronger than I am. He'd probably run faster than I can, so I'm not going to tell you anything about chocolate.
Oh,
But if you ever get
He
interested
told
in
us
your health,
yesterday, though.
yeah.
if you ever get interested in your health, we'll talk about it.
Well, I mean, I've given up coffee now in the last few minutes.
Giving up is a real good word, because you don't always have to give up. Sometimes you can just change things.
Okay. How can I
Okay?
change
It's better
from
to
eating chocolate?
substitute.
Is chocolate another monster?
Well, chocolate was my hardest. Chocolate has theobromine in it, which is something like caffeine, except it's 23 times stronger, 23 times more addictive. And I finally, after 20 years of fighting this, got off of my addiction to chocolate. And I have been totally free from my addiction to chocolate for probably 4 hours now.
I got you.
Especially since it's only morning.
You don't have to tell everything you know.
Well, I'm jumping out.
Well, it was nice to
Continue.
have you stop by.
Good to see you.
Come back anytime.
You know, you said something else yesterday that really struck me. You said many things that were very potent, but one of them was that, was it MS that was came across the same year as they started first doing the silver fillings?
They started doing silver fillings in the late 1820s and then started doing them commercially in 1832 in Paris. And it's sort of interesting to notice that the first case of multiple sclerosis was diagnosed in 1832 in Paris. There was one of the leukemias that showed up a little after that. And we did have sickle cell anemia, but it wasn't particularly a problem until 1911, and it was 1910 that they started placing amalgams in the black people in America. So if you follow the patterns, Dr. Olimpio Pinto, who was one of my grand mentors, followed some of these patterns. And he did point out that in, let's see, the Bantu, I think it's the Bantu, it's a group of people in Africa, there are about 12.5 million of them. They have no multiple sclerosis there, and they have virtually no amalgams. It's just being used. There may be a couple of hundred people out of 12 million who have amalgams, but so far in 12 million people, no multiple sclerosis.
That was really what my question was, because last night I started thinking about that, and I thought, well, what about these countries where they don't have this? You know, what about areas where they don't have root canal?
Well, just wait, because the amount of amalgam, when I first started fussing about this issue, in America we were placing 1 million amalgams a day. And now they are down to a little over 100,000 a day. So we have had some impact. But what about these manufacturers that are making amalgam? They are now wholesaling it out to the third world countries like the Bantus and all these people who don't have the advantage of mercury in their mouth. So just wait. They will soon catch up with us, because the new fillings, and I'm talking about new since about 1978, it was interesting that about the time I graduated, sometime in there, they came out with an amalgam that had 20% copper in it. And they immediately took it off the market and said, oh, the copper is too toxic at 20%, we can't use this. So they changed then 10 years later to 30% copper, and they call it state-of-the-art amalgam. In this, the mercury comes out 50 times faster than the amalgam of 25 years ago. So one filling today is worth
50, you're saying.
50 times faster, and the copper comes out 50 times faster. Both are toxic metals.
And that's state-of-the-art. So state-of-the-art. We really have to wonder what state-of-the-art means, don't we? And take a good look at everything that we do and everything that we allow to be done to our bodies, anything that's put in our bodies or our children. Just because it says state-of-the-art, we've got it right here, folks, 50 times faster. And that's state-of-the-art. We don't want it to go 50 times faster. And I understand you really have gotten in some trouble with your local authorities around some of these issues.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the place where I really upset the Dental Association more than I ever have before was when we had a physician do spinal taps on some of our patients before and after treatment.
Spinal taps.
Spinal taps. This is where you go in and take out the spinal fluid and test it. We did about 53 of these, and we have a segment of them that was done on multiple sclerosis patients. Well, with the multiple sclerosis patients, we noticed in testing it, we had precipitated out all the proteins. They're not supposed to be that many proteins in spinal fluid, and here are a whole lot of them in this little column that aren't supposed to be there. And so by doing other tests, we can figure out what they are. We did the other tests, and it didn't tell us what they were. Well, you know, this is a very sophisticated, state-of-the-art testing, and yet we couldn't find what these proteins were, and it took months before we figured out these are not manufactured proteins. What they were pieces of brain tissue that had been pulled out of the brain and run down the spinal fluid. And that's where we found it, was down here in the spinal fluid. Well, the thing that really made him mad was that not only did we do the before, but we did the after spinal tap and found all of those proteins were gone. Every one of them except albumin, and it was supposed to be there. And this was 24 hours after we finished our protocol on multiple sclerosis patients. All those proteins were gone. Who does this implicate as a primary cause of multiple sclerosis, which is exponentially going into epidemic phase now? Well, it did implicate dentistry, the high copper amalgam, whatever, as one of the primary causes of multiple sclerosis, because all these patients had shown, quote, remarkable recoveries after, placebo recoveries. Well, if you have changes in the spinal fluid, this is not a placebo. So they got extremely upset over this, and they announced at that time they could not afford to have this information get to the public, and they had to stop Huggins some way or another. So at that time they took my license. So
They took your license?
They took my license, so I couldn't go around places like this talking about it.
How could
Were
they
you in
take
the
your
street?
license? I don't understand. How is
Well,
that
very
possible?
simple. Ask Paul Harvey. He was the first one to find out about it. The whole news media talked about it all over the United States 6 days before they told me. But they had a little vote, and they decided that, they had a little trial. And it was interesting. Some of the people at the trial who testified against me were dead. That was, then it got
They were
worse from
dead.
there on. They were dead, yes. And if you look in their records, they gave us the highest commendations for our center of anybody we'd ever had through this center. It was kind of interesting that illegally an investigator from Colorado crossed the state line to go into another state to encourage the children to file a suit against me, which they later admitted was fraudulent. But it was illegal for her to do this, to go across the state line and solicit a complaint. And she was fired for this, but kept on the payroll of the state. So the state paid. So in the trial, we brought her up on the stand and said, "Can you explain this?" And she says, "I have immunity." I guess she'd been given an immunization shot, because she did not have to explain why she could cross the state line and do things that nobody else could do, why she got fired and yet was still being paid. So this was
Well, that's
never...
pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean...
I don't know. They still got the license. Of course, it's just in Colorado. That's the only license they got. But they made a big fuss and bother about it. And the primary reason behind it was that we were able to show it in the material that has now been published that does highly implicate dental materials as the cause of these abnormal proteins being pulled out, chunks of brain being pulled out. What they don't know is that multiple sclerosis is not the only place we found that. We found that in Lou Gehrig's disease. We found that in Alzheimer's. We found it in several other places. But the thing is, after the protocol was used, the proteins stopped being torn out of the brain in every one of those diseases. So that is reason enough to try to stop me, because the Multiple Sclerosis Society hates me. I mean, they make, I've heard, $32 million a year to look for a cause, not to find one. Because think of destroying that organization just by saying, we found where it comes from. But just like with the boy with leukemia, I feel the same way with multiple sclerosis. It didn't have to happen. Yes, we can improve it. Can we cure it? No, we can't. But we can certainly improve it with the multidiscipline protocol. But we can never bring you back to the position that you would have been in today had you not had the amalgam placed in the first place. So
Or had that
why not
root canal.
stop it? Or the root canal. As a matter of fact, I was interviewed on a large radio station the other day, and the fellow who was interviewing me is Robert Atkins, who is an MD, who's
Yeah.
kind of a rabble-rouser. I don't know
Right,
why I
he is,
attract
for
these
sure.
people, but he said we about 20 minutes into the program discussing root canals, And he said, all right, radio audience here, here's our telephone number. If you had a terminal disease happen within 3 months of the placement of a root canal, call and tell us about it. Instantly, all the lines lit up, and you would not believe all the things that had happened there. How long do we have to sit here and let these dental materials beat us up before we start saying, I don't want a root canal? Remove the tooth. Replacing a tooth is something that dentists are good at. That's a mechanical procedure. But replacing a liver, replacing a kidney, replacing a heart, replacing your life, replacing the loved ones who have left you, replacing your finances that you gave to the medical profession to try to get diagnosed, these things do not have to happen if we would stop. The American Dental Association is encouraging dentists to do 30 million root canals this year. This is called preventive dentistry. I think we should prevent dentistry. Am I getting wound up?
No, I'm glad you're getting wound up. It's really important. And what I'm so glad you've done all this. Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank you for so many people I know.
Well, we appreciate you guys coming in and taking an interview like this to help us generate awareness to the public, because the public are the only ones who own your own bodies. You own your own souls. And don't let mercury go clear through to your soul, as I feel it can. It destroys lives, it creates suicidal thoughts, it destroys the immune system and everything else. But when you look at people and see how far in it has gone, you can't help but think it may have affected the soul too. It's time we cut that out. So thank you very much for letting me come talk to you here in Hawaii.
Well, God bless you, and God bless your work. Really, I'm so grateful, as I said, for everything that you're doing. And I personally want to find out more for me. And as I understand it, what we can do now is we can say no. We can say no.
You can call our toll-free number. There are ways
We
to
can
find
read the
out.
books.
What's the toll-free number?
We can call the toll-free number.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's in the book. It starts out 888.
It's an 888 number, and it's listed.
Title of the book is Uninformed Consent. That's the one that came out 3 months ago, and it has already sold out of its first printing, which is makes you feel kind of good. It's good. For
Uninformed consent. I really look forward to reading that very much. And I just am trying to regroup here for what people can do for themselves from this conversation, which would be to say no. Realize that you have your own choice in what you can have put in your mouth or your children's mouth, and that there are alternatives to this. And if you do have diseases, look into the fact that this could be a causing factor for your illnesses.
If you have been to a half a dozen doctors and nobody can figure out what's going on, chances are pretty good it's toxicity from your mouth.
I just went through this with my mom, and I'm sorry that we didn't get there. And God bless you, Mom. But you don't have to have that. You can look and have a look and see if it could be your teeth that are causing this.
I suppose this is the time that you should put your money where your mouth is.
Good point. Well, thank you all very, very much for joining us, and it's our great honor to have Dr. Hal Huggins here with us today. And I do hope you'll come back to Maui really soon so that more people can be educated and have some sort of understanding of what this is all about. And I'm glad that you tuned in today, and I hope that this has served you and opened your mind and created you to give some thought to your own health and your own mouth. Thank you, and God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Aloha.
Aloha?
Aloha.
Okay.
Well, so many people here in healing country.
this in Colorado.
Bougainvillea. I love the bougainvillea.
This is a beautiful spot, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.